Hi guys, in my last video I basically introduced myself and explained what this vlog was all about. So I want you please to go and check it out just so you can get some context to what we are addressing here. And today I want to jump right in. So our society is currently, I would say, falling apart. And a brief glance at the news over the last week and the last month shows riots, protests, looting, violence all around the world. And in many of the places where it's happening isn't some distant war zone. It's suburbs and cities, I think, where we least expected these things to happen. Now, the first question we have to ask ourselves is, how are we to respond to all of this? I would say there's four ways of responding. The first is you can get up and join these protests and engage, carry on with the violence and and breakdown. Secondly, you can stay at home and hide and do nothing. Thirdly, you can get onto social media and furiously write down all sorts of angry words, which you'll probably regret later. And then option 4 is to do something completely different. Now, I am of the belief that option 4 is the only way that we are going to build up our society again. So let's look at this. And before you completely disagree with me, just remember this is a Christian vlog. And so I'm always going to see what the Bible says, and I want you to please hear me out. Alright? Firstly, we have to accept the fact that our world is in a lot of pain and hurt. And our society, the issues of our societies have never been dealt with properly. So here I live in South Africa. We had, from the 1600s, we had 200 and odd years of colonialism, followed by apartheid, and all that thankfully ended in 1994. It was a very dark times, and I mean most of the people were oppressed and hurt and marginalized by that. Now, the question is, has the pain and the hurt of all those years been fully dealt with? And I don't believe it has. And yes, in the 1990s and the mid-90s, we had something called the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which was chaired by Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And what happened there was that many people, individual stories, were listened to, and there was a degree of forgiveness and reparations made for that. But that wasn't enough. Now, closer to home, if I might share a story, I've been working in a community called Ocean View for the last 10 years. And Ocean View is a coloured community. Now, I know some of my foreign listeners are going to be deeply offended by the term coloured, but please understand that in South Africa, that is the official term given to a particular race group. And my friends and staff in Ocean View have all insisted that that's the term that I use. It's how they identify themselves. Now, Ocean View was formed roughly 50 years ago after the coloured people from the surrounding areas, Fish Hoek, Simonstown, Clovelly, Glencairn, Noordhoek, were forcibly removed. And those areas were turned into white areas. We had a horrendous government act called the Group Areas Act that was forced among people, and they were placed in a brand new area. There wasn't very much here. There were snakes and bush, and it was quite far away from anything, really. Now, over the past 10 years, almost every week I meet with many of the elderly people, and we talk. I'm fascinated about history and listening to people's stories, and so we talk at length about the past and why we are where we are today. And it always strikes me, as recently as last month, when I was talking to a group of ladies who were well into their 70s, that the pain and the hurts of that forced removal 50 years ago is still very much alive in them. We all sit and cry together sometimes. The pain is still there. Now, much of South Africa is still like this. Much of America is still like this. Europe, Australia, Asia, Africa is still like this. And, I think just because we had a few laws passed in 1994 and 1995 to end apartheid does not mean that the hurt was suddenly wiped out. Now, how do we fix society? I want to go back to the Bible. There's a book called Nehemiah. It's a fascinating book. I love it. And it's in the Old Testament, in case you've never read it. And I'll start right at the beginning, Nehemiah chapter 1, verse 3. So Nehemiah was an exile living in like an area near Persia. And he gets word from his brother that his hometown, Jerusalem, the walls were broken and the gates had been burned with fire. Now just think a little bit about that. If you were overseas and you got word that your town at home, where you grew up, the place that you loved, where your roots were, had been broken down and burnt with fire. Just let's think about it like that. And how did Nehemiah respond? Well, it says in verse 4, it says, "When I heard these words, I sat down and wept and mourned for many days. And I was praying and fasting before the God of heaven." I wish to put it to you that before we do anything to fix up our society, that we have to first, we have to get a very, very good idea of what the problem is. We have to get a full detailed report, not from somebody else. Don't get it in newspapers and on social media or stories from others. I wish to say that we need to go into the mess and we need to sit there and we need to get a very, very balanced idea and view of what is going on, what is wrong, and to ask ourselves some very hard questions. Now, I want to say that it involves getting out of your comfort zone. It is messy. It is not nice. For the last 18 years that I've done this, I've come home traumatized many nights from what I've seen and from what I've heard. Secondly, once you've got a fairly good picture, and that doesn't happen overnight, but once you have a very good picture, you need to let it break your heart. If you look around you and are not moved by what you see, then you cannot ever address it properly. And thirdly, you need to find out what God and His thoughts are on the matter. Now, one thing that still shocks me today is that many of my fellow South Africans, and I deal with hundreds of foreigners from all over the world every year, and many of them, the Christian ones I'm talking about, have no clue about how people are living in their country. They do not know about the struggles, they do not know about the pain and the hardship that these guys are facing, and sometimes they might live even less than 5 kilometers away. Now listen, a Christian in particular cannot keep his or her head in the sand. It does not work like that. Our job is to be the salt and the light, and our task is to go run into the chaos and to make a difference there. But first, we have to cry some tears for those people around us. So my challenge this week is consider your area a troubled part of your area, and then go for a walk there. Go and immerse yourself in the mess. Listen to the people, smell the air, taste, feel, whatever it is. Take it all in. Then go into a quiet space and let God talk to you and speak to your heart. Thanks for listening.